There comes a moment in life when silence becomes louder than words, when distance speaks more truth than presence ever could. You see, sometimes you don't need to argue, explain, or fight for understanding. Sometimes the most powerful move you can make is to pull away, not out of pride, not out of anger, but out of self-respect, because your energy, your presence, your love, they all have weight. And when you've been giving endlessly without being valued, stepping back becomes your greatest act of self-worth. We live in a world where people often realize the value of something only after it's gone. They grow used to your kindness, your consistency, your emotional availability. They take comfort in your presence as if it's permanent until it's not. When you finally pull away, the energy shifts. The silence becomes a mirror. They start to see the gaps you used to fill, the peace you used to bring, the light you used to radiate. And in that emptiness, your absence begins to teach not through punishment, but through perspective. Because pulling away isn't about abandoning anyone, it's about returning to yourself. It's about recognizing that your worth doesn't increase by how much you give, it increases when you know when to stop giving. When you step back, you don't just create space, you create clarity, and in that clarity, people begin to feel what they once ignored. They begin to remember your presence, not because of your effort, but because of your energy. So when you pull away, understand this: you're not disappearing, you're redefining your energy. You're reminding the world that your presence is a privilege, not a guarantee, and the moment you choose yourself, the world starts to feel the difference. Because sometimes it takes your absence for others to finally recognize the light you always brought into their lives. Your absence reveals what your presence once provided, and that truth doesn't always come gently. When you're there, constantly showing up, giving, supporting, and caring, people grow comfortable. They adjust to your presence like it's part of their daily rhythm. They start to assume your consistency is endless, your patience unbreakable, and your energy infinite. What they don't realize is that your presence was doing more than they ever acknowledged. It was holding things together. It was stabilizing emotions, creating peace, and bringing balance into spaces that might have otherwise fallen apart. But when you pull away, when your energy is no longer available on demand, the balance shifts. That's when they begin to feel the magnitude of what you used to give effortlessly. The absence of your presence doesn't just create silence, it creates awareness. The comfort that once came easily is now gone. The warmth that used to surround them starts to cool. The reassurance that was always within reach suddenly isn't there anymore. They begin to notice small things: the way your words once carried calmness, the way your energy softened chaos, the way your presence made everything feel more certain. It's like they've been breathing your energy all along and never noticed until they had to live without it. That's when the realization hits: you weren't just there, you were anchoring something deeper. You see, presence is powerful, but it's also quiet. You don't always recognize how much influence you have when you're immersed in giving. You simply do what feels natural: listening, helping, comforting, without realizing that you're being the emotional heartbeat in someone's world. But when you step back, your absence magnifies your presence. It creates a contrast that words could never achieve. People start to remember the feeling of being around you, how your laughter filled the space, how your energy made them feel grounded, how your care made them feel seen. These memories come alive not because you're there, but because you're not. Absence has a strange way of sharpening perception. It strips away distractions and reveals truth. When you're gone, people start noticing what was real and what was just noise. They realize how easy it was to take your steadiness for granted, how they assumed your emotional support was just who you are, without understanding the effort and depth behind it. And that's the beauty and sometimes the pain of pulling away. It's not about making them miss you, it's about making space for truth to surface. The truth that your energy carried value, that your presence made life softer, that your effort was never small. When your presence is gone, everything that once seemed ordinary becomes extraordinary in hindsight. The things they overlooked, your understanding, your consistency, your kindness, now become precious. They start to replay the moments, the gestures, the quiet care you offered. And that's when it becomes clear your presence was never just something they had, it was something they needed. Your absence didn't create emptiness, it revealed it. It showed what your energy had been filling all along, and that realization becomes the most profound reflection of your worth. Pulling away is not rejection, it's redirection. It's not about cutting people off or proving a point. It's about coming back to yourself after giving too much of who you are to those who didn't value it enough. There's a difference between walking away in anger and stepping back in awareness. When you pull away, you're not punishing anyone, you're preserving yourself. You're choosing to stop fighting for a place in someone's life who hasn't made room for your worth. It's about understanding that your peace, your energy, and your growth can't flourish in spaces where you're constantly misunderstood or undervalued. Sometimes the most powerful act of self-love isn't saying more, it's saying nothing and stepping back with quiet strength. Redirection means shifting your focus from what drains you to what restores you. It's taking all that energy you once poured into trying to be seen, heard, or appreciated and giving it back to yourself. It's realizing that you can't change someone by staying. You can only change yourself by letting go. When you stop chasing what isn't aligning, you start attracting what's meant for you. Pulling away gives you the emotional distance to see clearly, to see that not everyone deserves your presence and not every connection deserves your constant effort. This kind of redirection is not weakness, it's wisdom. It's the moment you stop confusing attachment with love and potential with reality. You begin to understand that sometimes people can't meet you where you are because they haven't grown enough to, and that's not your job to fix. You're not here to shrink yourself so someone else can feel comfortable. You're here to rise, to evolve, to create space for energy that matches yours. Pulling away allows that to happen. It's like clearing emotional clutter. The things that once weighed on your spirit finally lose their hold when you stop feeding them your attention. The moment you redirect your energy, you start to notice how heavy things had become. You realize how much emotional labor you were doing to keep certain relationships alive. You start to feel lighter, freer, more connected to your true self. That's what pulling away does, it gives you back to you. And that's the greatest redirection of all. Meanwhile, your absence becomes the lesson for others. They begin to see the difference between your presence and your silence. They start to understand that you didn't walk away because you stopped caring. You walked away because you started caring about yourself. And that shift changes everything. Because when you redirect your energy toward peace, self-respect, and purpose, you stop living for validation and start living in alignment. You stop needing people to understand you, and instead, you become comfortable being understood by yourself. That's the moment your power returns, not through control, but through clarity. You didn't reject them, you simply reconnected with your higher self, and that's where true freedom begins. When you pull away, silence becomes your loudest message. It speaks volumes in ways that words never could. Silence is not emptiness, it's presence without noise. It's a form of strength that doesn't demand attention but commands it naturally. When you stop explaining, defending, or proving yourself, something shifts in the energy between you and others. They start to feel what your words could never make them understand. The stillness you create by stepping back forces awareness to rise, because when your voice disappears, your absence starts echoing in the spaces your energy once filled. People rarely realize your value while they have constant access to you. When you're always available, always showing up, your energy becomes expected, not appreciated. But silence breaks that pattern. It interrupts their comfort and makes them confront what they took for granted. That's the power of withdrawal. It creates a void, and voids make people reflect. It makes them feel what life is like without your reassurance, your support, your light. Silence becomes the mirror where they finally see how much your presence meant, because the noise of routine no longer distracts them from the truth. This kind of silence isn't about manipulation, it's about peace. It's not meant to punish, it's meant to preserve. When you stop arguing to be understood, you save your energy for those who already do. When you stop chasing explanations, you start attracting alignment. Silence teaches others through absence what your presence once provided. It makes people realize that connection isn't guaranteed, it's earned through consistency, respect, and effort. You're not walking away to make anyone miss you. You're walking away because you finally understand the value of your stillness. In silence, you also hear yourself again. You reconnect with the thoughts and emotions that were drowned out by the noise of trying to be seen. You start to feel your intuition strengthening, your confidence returning, and your boundaries solidifying. You become grounded in your own energy rather than tangled in someone else's chaos. That's when you realize silence is not weakness, it's wisdom expressed through calm. And while others may only feel confusion or regret in your absence, you find clarity in your quiet. Because silence doesn't just make them remember you, it makes you remember who you were before the noise, before the overgiving, before you lost yourself trying to be enough. Your silence becomes your sanctuary. It protects your spirit, restores your energy, and reminds the world that your peace is not up for negotiation. Eventually, those who once overlooked your voice start to hear it loudest when you're no longer speaking. That's the beauty of pulling away. Your silence says everything they refused to listen to when you were still there. When you pull away, you create space, and space is powerful. It's in that space that truth begins to unfold. When you've been giving endlessly, showing up constantly, and investing your energy without return, your presence becomes something others take for granted. But the moment you pull back, the energy shifts. The air changes, that gap, that silence, that distance becomes a mirror reflecting everything they couldn't see before. Your absence forces awareness to awaken. It makes people feel what life is like without your warmth, your effort, your consistency. Space becomes the quiet teacher that words could never be. You see, most people only start to see when something or someone is no longer right in front of them. Familiarity numbs appreciation. It dulls sensitivity. When you're always there, people stop noticing the value of what you bring. But when you step away, that absence highlights your presence in ways that constant giving never could. Suddenly, the things they overlooked become clear: the emotional support, the laughter, the peace, the grounding energy you provided. The moments that felt small to you now echo in their memory. Space turns routine into realization. Creating distance isn't about playing games, it's about restoring balance. When energy flows only one way, it drains you. But when you pull back, you interrupt that imbalance. You stop overextending and allow the universe to realign what's meant for you. Space gives people the opportunity to rise to your level or drift away, and either outcome serves your growth. Because the truth is, not everyone can meet you where you are. Some connections thrive on your constant giving, while others only deepen when you stop doing all the emotional lifting. The space you create filters out what isn't genuine. In that stillness, clarity appears. You begin to understand the difference between attachment and connection, between effort and exhaustion. You see who reaches back and who fades away. You realize that real connections don't fear space, they respect it. They understand that distance doesn't break a bond, it tests its strength. The ones who truly value you will use that space to reflect, to change, to reconnect with intention. The ones who are only there out of convenience will fall silent, and that silence becomes your peace. So when you pull away, don't rush to fill the emptiness. Let it breathe. Let the space do its work. Because that distance you create isn't loneliness, it's leverage. It's the space where transformation happens. It's where they begin to feel your absence, and you begin to feel your power. And that's the moment everything changes, not because you forced it, but because you finally made room for alignment to take over. In that space, the right people gravitate toward you naturally, and the wrong ones fade into memory. Space reveals truth, and truth restores peace. When you pull away, you reclaim your emotional power. For too long, you may have given your strength away by over-explaining, over-caring, or overstaying in situations that drained you. You kept showing up even when it hurt because you believed that consistency could change someone who wasn't ready to meet you where you stood. But when you finally pull back, you start to see where your energy truly belongs. You begin to realize that not everyone deserves the access they once had to your heart. That realization isn't born from bitterness, it's born from awakening. You're no longer chasing peace from others, you're generating it from within. Reclaiming your emotional power means remembering that your attention is a form of energy, and energy is currency. Every message you send, every effort you make, every time you stay when you should have stepped away, you spend a piece of that currency. When you stop giving it freely, people start noticing its worth. They begin to feel the absence of your attention, your warmth, your effort. What they once thought would always be there suddenly isn't, and that's when the lesson hits. Pulling away teaches them the value of what they had and teaches you the value of what you were giving away too easily. This kind of power isn't loud, it doesn't demand, it doesn't seek revenge. It simply stands tall in self-respect. When you reclaim your emotional space, you stop begging for reciprocity from people who never intended to match your energy. You stop asking for closure from those who were comfortable leaving things open. You stop depending on validation to remind yourself that you matter. You know you matter because you finally see yourself through the lens of self-worth, not through the lens of someone else's neglect. Pulling away gives you time to rebuild your inner foundation. You start to feel grounded again, the chaos quiets. The emotions that once ruled you start to serve you. You become centered, no longer reactive, no longer desperate for answers, no longer waiting for recognition. That's what it means to step into your emotional power. You stop trying to control outcomes and start trusting your peace. You learn to be okay with detachment because you know your value doesn't disappear when you walk away, it multiplies. And as you reclaim this strength, others begin to sense the shift. They feel your absence not because you vanished, but because your energy no longer bends to meet theirs. You've taken back what was always yours, your calm, your confidence, your clarity. That's when they start to remember how your presence once stabilized them, how your energy once uplifted them, and how your love once made them feel safe. But by then you've changed. You're no longer trying to be needed, you're simply being whole. Because when you pull away and stand in your emotional power, you stop living in the shadow of someone else's attention and start shining from your own light. When you pull away, healing begins, not the kind of healing that happens overnight, but the kind that grows quietly in your solitude. You start to feel the parts of yourself that were ignored, silenced, or drained begin to breathe again. The noise fades, the confusion settles, and suddenly you start hearing your own voice again, the one that got lost while trying to please, prove, and hold everything together. Pulling away is not just an act of strength, it's an act of self-restoration. It's the moment you stop waiting for someone else to bring you peace and decide to create it yourself. Healing begins when you stop fighting for a connection that no longer feeds your soul. When you stop replaying conversations in your mind, stop trying to decode mixed signals, and stop holding onto memories that keep reopening wounds, you finally make peace with the fact that some chapters aren't meant to be rewritten, they're meant to be closed. And in that closure, something beautiful happens. You remember who you were before the hurt. You remember the version of yourself that laughed freely, dreamed boldly, and gave love without fear. That remembrance is where true healing begins. As the silence deepens, you learn to sit with your emotions instead of escaping them. You realize that pain doesn't destroy you, resistance does. The more you fight it, the louder it becomes. But when you sit still and let the pain move through you, it begins to soften. You start to see that every heartbreak, every disappointment, every ending had a purpose to redirect you toward yourself. Healing then becomes a form of awakening. You begin to trust that the universe doesn't take without reason, and that everything you've released is making space for something greater to find you. Through this process, your energy shifts. You stop living in survival mode and start living in self-awareness. You begin to appreciate your own company again. You realize that solitude isn't loneliness, it's sacred space. It's where you rebuild your confidence, your boundaries, and your sense of self-worth. You no longer seek completion from others because you've learned how to be whole on your own. You find peace in the quiet, power in the stillness, and beauty in the simplicity of your own presence. And as you heal, something extraordinary happens. Those who once drained you start to feel the absence of your energy, but you no longer crave their recognition. You've outgrown the version of yourself that needed to be seen. Now you simply are. Your energy becomes grounded, magnetic, and untouchable. You've turned your pain into wisdom, your silence into strength, and your distance into clarity. That's the power of healing. After pulling away, you no longer move from emptiness. You move from fullness. You no longer chase what left. You attract what's aligned. And that's when you realize your healing wasn't the end of the story, it was the beginning of becoming who you were always meant to be. When you pull away, something profound begins to happen, not just to others, but within you. The act of stepping back becomes a mirror that reflects truth on every side. You start to see who valued you and who only valued your availability. You start to notice who reaches back when you stop reaching out. And in that silence you begin to hear something far more powerful than words, the echo of your own strength. Your absence doesn't just create emptiness, it creates awareness. It shows the world, and more importantly you, that your energy was never ordinary. It had weight, it had meaning, it had power. People start to feel what they never took the time to see, and you begin to reclaim what you never should have given away: your peace, your presence, and your worth. This kind of transformation isn't easy. Pulling away often feels painful at first because it goes against your natural desire to love, to fix, to hold on. But healing isn't found in clinging, it's found in letting go. You start realizing that not every connection deserves endless effort, and not every bond is built to last forever. The people who are meant for you will meet you halfway, not because you begged them to, but because your absence made them realize what your presence meant. And the ones who disappear when you stop chasing them, they were never aligned with your energy in the first place. That realization doesn't break you, it frees you. You stop asking why they couldn't love you right and start asking why you stayed so long when you were loving wrong. The beauty of pulling away is that it restores your balance. You no longer give from emptiness, you give from overflow. You stop overcompensating for people who are comfortable under-delivering. You learn to protect your energy as a sacred resource, not a gift to be handed out to anyone who shows temporary interest. You begin to recognize that the world responds to how you treat yourself. The more you honor your boundaries, the more others are forced to. The more you choose peace, the less chaos you attract. What used to exhaust you starts to feel irrelevant. You find strength not in control, but in surrender, surrendering to the truth that what's meant for you will never require you to lose yourself. As you evolve through distance, something shifts inside of you. A quiet confidence takes root. You no longer need validation to feel seen or connection to feel whole. You realize that your energy is magnetic, that your presence is transformative, and that your silence is often louder than your words. You stop begging for closure because you understand that peace doesn't come from explanations. It comes from acceptance. You find comfort in knowing that pulling away wasn't an ending, it was a return to your worth, your clarity, and your power. You begin to radiate a new kind of calm, the calm that comes from someone who knows their value and no longer bargains with it. And in the end, that's what this journey is truly about: remembering your power through your absence. When you pull away, you don't vanish, you evolve. You create the kind of space that demands reflection, not just from others, but from yourself. You become the lesson, the reminder, the presence that lingers even when you're gone. Your silence becomes strength, your distance becomes dignity, and your peace becomes your greatest statement. You no longer live to be remembered, you live to be real. And that authenticity, that unwavering energy, is what makes your presence unforgettable. Because when you finally pull away for the right reasons, you don't lose, you rise. You rise above the noise, above the pain, and into the highest version of yourself, the one that was waiting all along to be felt, honored, and free. Thank you for being here, for listening, for reflecting, and for allowing these words to speak to that quiet, powerful part of you. This wasn't just a message about distance or absence. It was a reminder of your worth, your strength, and your ability to rise even when you have to walk away. I want you to know that every time you choose peace over chaos, silence over drama, and self-respect over approval, you're growing. You're evolving. You're becoming the version of yourself that no longer settles for less than what your soul deserves. I deeply appreciate the time you've given to be part of this space, this energy, and this conversation. Remember, your presence is a gift, but it's also a choice. Don't give it where it's not valued. Don't pour it where it's not reciprocated. Let your distance speak when your words no longer do, and let your peace protect what your love once tried to fix. Every time you pull away from what drains you, you create room for what fulfills you. As we close, I want you to carry this truth with you: your absence is not emptiness, it's power. It's the space where you rebuild, realign, and remember who you are. The world might feel your distance, but you will feel your strength. And that balance, that inner stability, is what will keep guiding you toward the life and connections that truly reflect your energy. So, thank you not just for being here, but for showing up for yourself, for choosing growth, for choosing awareness, for choosing to honor your own energy. It's not easy to pull away, but sometimes it's the only way to return home to yourself. Until we meet again, take care of your heart, protect your peace, and never forget your power. You don't have to be everywhere to be felt. Sometimes your silence and your strength speak louder than your presence ever could. Thank you and goodbye for now. Stay grounded, stay true, and keep becoming the powerful light you were always meant to be.